us met our next speaker, Joe Kaplan, years ago at Microsoft's MVP Summit on the Microsoft campus. A 15-time MVP, he has a pretty quiet and matter-of-fact delivery, which caught us off guard when he started talking about the thousands of applications he had connected to his Microsoft ADFS server, when most of us had like 10. At Accenture, where he's the architecture and security lead for digital identity, Joe is all about scale and taking great strides in identity security, two goals that are usually at odds with each other. He is also the co-author of the .NET Developer's Guide to Directory Services Programming. But in Joe's spare time, he's the drummer for Arriver, a Chicago-based pan-metalist band that forges a rare path in their focus on long-term narrative and extreme sonic diversity, assimilating a spectrum of metal-adjacent and unmetal musics into an idiosyncratic whole. And I'll let you ask him about that afterwards. Joe, welcome.
All right, thanks everybody. So yeah, my name's Joe Kaplan. I am one of the people who run identity for Accenture in Accenture's global IT organization. And so I'm going to talk to you guys today about essentially what we have done making our organization passwordless, and then talking about what we are doing next to get to full phishing resistance. So basically in two parts here. I'm going to start off with some stats to talk about. So essentially, Accenture is a really big company. This is a pretty large environment, very dynamic, lots of stuff going on in here. It says 800,000 employees, 796,000 employee identities. That number is a marketing number. That's off of a dashboard. That was different when I looked at it this morning. It bounces around a fair bit, but directionally, we're about 800,000 people. There's 1.1 million users in my intratenant. That we have an intratenant that is so large that we have some special dispensations with Microsoft to get around the 5 million object limit in the directory. So it's an interesting place to work. Specific to what we have done on this passwordless journey thing here, so what Accenture has actually done is we have taken our enterprise workforce and essentially we've eliminated passwords for over 80% of them. So all these people exist in our directory in a completely passwordless state. All of these people, for all of you Active Directory geeks out there, are smart card required in Active Directory and no longer use a password for accessing anything in our environment at all. There's a delta between the 645,000 people who are fully passwordless and the total number of employees. So we're about at 80%. That is a thing that we would like to close and something I will talk a little bit about later. But the first thing I'm going to do is talk to you about how we actually got ourselves into this place. It did not happen by magic and it didn't happen overnight. Other things that are potentially interesting up here to take a look at, within my intratenant, I have 37,000 applications that are integrated with it. This is fewer than the 900,000 that Microsoft was sporting until pretty recently, and still fewer than the number that they still have after they deleted most of them. We have a governance system in place. You can't actually, we don't allow people to just create them in the tenant directly. Those permissions are not enabled. So there's like a thing that you got to go through, but I'm still adding them at about a pace of 500 a month through normal application integration processes. So it grows and grows. Anyway, a few things that are potentially helpful to know about how we do our IT security stuff. So first and foremost, we are a cloud company. We very much focus on doing cloud first, cloud only. This isn't to say that we aren't a hybrid environment. We still run Active Directory, we still synchronize, but we have very, very little in the way of what you would refer to as like on-prem data center. Most of that stuff exists primarily to integrate our networks across our offices, doing all the like cloud WAN stuff And because we still have offices and we have office networks, but we're not really hosting stuff there anymore. Our stuff is hosted in the public cloud. We are a very strong authentication-focused company. So for you Entra geeks in the audience, we have one of our conditional access policy is MFA, all cloud apps, all people, full stop. And we've had that for a really, really long time. This is regardless of network location and whatnot. And so this has been table stakes for us for a really long time. What I'm actually talking about in the context of what we're trying to do here is raise the bar on how we're actually implementing MFA to use a stronger version of MFA that doesn't actually use the passwords. We also are not really a VPN company, so we don't put a lot of stuff inside of our corporate network. We put our stuff boldly on the public internet to be consumed. We buy a lot of SaaS services, and then we essentially make a lot of SaaS services. Our custom applications, of which we have many, many, are also consumed just like SaaS services are. And so in order to do that, we put a lot of effort into hardening our attack surface. There's a whole bunch of effort that goes into hardening the devices to making sure that they're worthy of accessing these resources, and hardening especially our custom endpoints that we have out there in the public internet so that we believe that they are effectively defended and can be deployed in this bold way. But yeah, if you're a VPN user at Accenture, you are probably an IT admin, because those are generally the only people who actually need to use these things. Okay, so why did we do this? And this is a little bit about the sales pitch. How did the funding come about to make this happen? And so the key message here is that when we decided that we were going to go passwordless, we pitched this to the CISO. And so just by point of clarification, I don't actually work for the CISO. The way IT is organized in Accenture, identity and security delivery is part of the IT organization. The CISO is my business customer. They don't really operate stuff except for the SOC. But we went to the CISO and said, hey, what's your biggest problem? He's like, phishing. I was like, okay, well, I got a thing for you. What if we made it such that that couldn't really happen anymore? And he was like, oh, that would be great. And so then, and he's like, okay, well, it's going to cost some money. Are you still with us? And he's like, okay, I'm still listening. But there's another piece of this that was really helpful, which is that, oh, and by the way, CISO, most of the time when you roll things out to the organization, everyone hates you as a result because you made their lives more miserable. And I have a thing for you. We're going to actually improve the user experience of everyone accessing all of your stuff, all of our stuff, at the same time that we actually make you more secure. And now suddenly everyone's really excited about it, and the users are excited as well too. So this is actually one of the rare treats that you have as a way to improve security and improve the user experience, because generally speaking, not having to deal with a password is really nice. Most of the passwordless login methods that people are using are actually much easier to use than they were previously doing. Our end users prefer this tremendously. We also saved some money doing this, but we did not justify the investment for doing this based on cost savings. This was very much a risk play. This is IT risk reduction, and we got it funded through that mechanism. The way we saved money was somewhat adjacent through some vendor consolidation stuff and a bunch of IT infrastructure reduction, not as much along the lines of we're reducing help desk costs by making all those password reset things go away. That actually did happen. It was replaced by people calling in, like, I'm having trouble with my Hello for Business, can you help me? Is it a wash? Maybe, I don't know. But people are still gonna have problems authenticating and are still gonna need your help desk to be there with you. At the same time, we did save a bunch of money by doing this, just not in the most obvious way. So how did we go about doing it? And it kind of boiled down into three basic things. So in order to go passwordless, you need passwordless solutions for all of your devices that people access your stuff with. Passwordless authentication mechanisms tend to be tied to devices, and people need to be able to essentially log in on the things that they're logging in with. So what we did was an analysis of our device space. We are primarily a Windows shop. how we do actually have we would call a small number of Macs. It's about 5% of workforce, but it's 35,000. I don't know, you guys can decide if that's a small number. It's almost round off error, but they're noisy, those Mac users. A lot of the people who have those things are also the people who are making the much larger paychecks. So we still have to take care of them as well too. It is very common within Accenture for people to access resources with their mobile device as well too. I think about 90% of our people opt in to use their personal mobile devices to access things like Teams and Outlook because it makes their lives better. And so we also needed a way to ensure that people had access on those things as well. We have a little bit of Linux in our environment, but it's not very much. It's like real round off error. I'm not even going to talk about that number. But okay, so the next thing was essentially if you were going to do passwordless, and having talked to a lot of my customers about this, this is kind of an IDaaS play. You really need to be in the cloud on an identity as a service platform, and you have to commit to one. When I talk with a lot of our customers, some of them are on Entra, some of them are on Okta, some of them are on Ping, some of them have all three. It's really, those are the most interesting. But the main thing is that in order to really take advantage of this stuff, you really do have to pick an IDaaS and go with it and commit. What we did was we committed to Entra. So we are a very large Microsoft customer. I didn't mention previously, but we're like all 800,000 of those people are E5 licensed. And so this is what we've done. You don't necessarily need to do it the same way because all of the other IDaaS vendors have a passwordless story out there, but you do need to commit. And so then the other piece of it was that we then needed to say, okay, all the things that people are logging into have to be integrated with the IDaaS in order for this to work. So we made a massive commitment to get all of the things that people actually log into to use Entra to make this happen. Wait, did I skip a slide? No, I didn't. All right, so the overall landscape of the solution, how is it all kind of stitched together? So the current solution, I'll talk about passkeys in a little bit, but the way it works is kind of like this. So we use Hello for Business as our primary mechanism. All those Windows users who are logging into things on their corporate managed Windows devices are using Hello for Business, and that is their login interface to get to all their stuff. In this model, we are using, we do both PIN and biometrics, but it is primarily PIN, and not all of our devices are even enabled with biometrics capability. So PIN is like kind of the lowest common denominator mechanism here, but Hello for Business is like a key part of the overall strategy. So the other big key piece, and I mentioned this previously, since so many of our people are also logging in to our apps and services using a mobile device, I needed a solution for mobile. And so we went with Authenticator with phone sign-in enabled. And this is an incredibly important piece. And the reason that we did this was that at the time when we were making all these investments and changes, this was the only game in town for a thing that you could actually do on a mobile device to log into other mobile applications. And so we have a massive deployment of Authenticator with phone sign in our environment today. We also, so we use FIDO tokens. These guys, this is my actual, one of my production FIDO tokens that has some admin accounts on it. So FIDO in our model is not intended to be for everyone. I've talked to some of our customers, and some people are like rolling out hardware-based FIDO tokens to everyone. We decided not to do that because A, it's really expensive, and B, it wasn't really necessary. We didn't see that we had a use case for it. So what we use FIDO for is essentially people who are in interesting work situations where they may work in an environment where they're hot desking. We have people who like staff call centers for our customers and whatnot, and they might not sit at the same desk every day. Hello for Business isn't a great solution for that because there's like registration limitations. So having a credential that you can move around with you is a much better thing. We have people who have limitations on being able to use their mobile devices in certain things. We also use this a lot for secondary accounts. So within our privileged access model, FIDO is pretty commonly used across the landscape. But our goal has been to keep FIDO basically at around 5% of workforce or lower, which we're right around that number in terms of our overall FIDO token deployment. So that's kind of the overall device mix, how this is all put together. The other really key piece of making all this work is bootstrapping. So how do you solve the problem where you have users who need to set up a new device but don't have a password anymore? Like, what is that first login experience to to your phone? I just switched phones and I need to set the new thing up and whatnot. What are you supposed to do for that? We use TAP really, really extensively for this. And for those of you who don't know what temporary access pass is, it is another piece of the Entra platform, which is a constrainable password that you can constrain both in time duration and in reuse, either single use or multi-use. And they can be used to log into a resource, and they're also treated by the platform as multi-factor authentication, which is important because I mentioned before we have a thing that requires multi-factor authentication for everything. So you need that to be able to get in and log into things. So we have actually made a couple of investments in TAP to democratize this. We have a self-service tool that we built that if we have time later, I can show you a screenshot of if you are interested. We also have this pretty well integrated with our service desk as well too. If you need to call into the service desk and go through some sort of a bootstrapping or reinitialization thing, like you lost all your stuff and you got nothing, then the service desk also has the ability to give you a TAP code as well too. So TAP ends up being our glue thing for doing all of our bootstrapping stuff across the enterprise. Okay. There was a slide in there and it is gone, so I'm just going to move on from it. There was a thing that I will mention is a little bit of how we actually got there, and then I'll come back to this. But essentially the way this worked was like this. So we, back in 2019, decided we are getting rid of our ADFS. And Sean mentioned that I used to run a giant ADFS environment. We had 13,000 configs in it, and it was running on like 100 and something servers and was all redundant out the wazoo and was really expensive. As a cloud workload, this is when we achieved a lot of cost savings. A lot of it was just turning this off. But we made a concerted effort to take that entire workload and move it to Entra. Part of the observation was that I already am paying Microsoft a good bit of money for all these licenses, and Entra does all the same stuff and it does it better and I don't have to run it. Why am I still doing this? So that was part of the motivation there. We also get the opportunity to take advantage of conditional access, which is an important thing for managing our overall security landscape. And then one of the things that also enabled was the ability of Entra to take all these passwordless authentication mechanisms. So for a whole bunch of different reasons, we, over the course of multiple years, moved all of our apps from ADFS to Entra and turned it off. The other thing we did simultaneous to that was, I would say in 2019, we started doing some experiments, like so we've got this Hello for Business thing, we've got Windows 10, does it work? Could we actually deploy it and roll it out? We didn't really have an aspiration at the time to take the entire organization passwordless. That was my boss at the time, was a very visionary IT leader, is like, no, you guys are thinking about this thing way too small. Like, we're gonna take the entire organization, we're gonna eliminate passwords for everyone. And I looked at him and was like, are you crazy? There's just no way we could possibly do that. I was like, nope, we're totally doing that. And he was right, we did. But the original play was like, let's experiment with these things and figure it out. What eventually happened is around 2021, Microsoft also added FIDO and Authenticator phone sign into the mix. And then it was go time, because then we had a model that we could actually take people's passwords away. We spent about a year enrolling everyone, getting the entire organization enrolled in Hello for Business and phone sign in and stuff like that. Giant change program, lots of emails and bugging people and videos and all these things that you might imagine it was required, dashboards to drive it and whatnot. And then we did another year of taking people's passwords away, which was also very interesting. So in waves of 50,000 a week, we went through and we would skrill you. So we would run a script, and the way it works is that we scramble your password with a randomized thing that nobody knows, which ends up being your password on the enter side after it syncs over, and then we set you for smart card login, and now you are well and truly passwordless and cannot log in any other way than the passwordless methods that you have. And then if you exploded, then we rolled you back, and then you had another week to fix whatever your problem was, and rinse and repeat until we got up to 600-something thousand people. So that was that. Essentially, we did this journey over the course of a couple of years. Sort of relevant to Alex's talk this morning, I would call all of this like kind of soft style. We were doing this in a very orderly manner. And we were not actually, so we're being attacked all the time. Like, don't get me wrong, but there was not a thing that had happened that was like a pivotal moment where we were suddenly like on a real defensive thing. This was a very like, this is a place we want to get to and we're going to get there. And we just kind of went and did it in a very organized and gradual way and got better and better, but without like a crisis situation that had occurred that sort of galvanized anything. So soft style. So that brings us up to today. And so this slide, I don't know, have any of you guys seen a slide like this before? Microsoft has something up on their website. So we borrowed this and we changed it a little bit. This has been editorialized by us. So the thing I will point out on here, the purists in the audience, and they're all right, of course, is that you're either phishing resistant or you're not. There is no like medium phishing resistance. So when we were talking about this originally internally, our take on this was that not all phishing attacks are equal. It is definitely the case that phone sign-in can be phished. It is hard to phish. It is not super easy, but we have learned through a number of incidents and our own testing that at a very low rate of success, it is actually phishable. The way it happens is that an attacker will contact the user out of band, sometimes through Teams, sometimes through text message, like whatever, and say, hey, I'm blah de blah, and I'm doing this thing. I need you to type this number in your Authenticator app. When it comes up, will you please do that? You have 5 minutes to comply. And most of the time, this does not work, and people do not fall for this, but yeah, sometimes they do. So, and so then Authenticator with phone sign-in is sort of like, essentially it's the weak link in the chain for us right now. The other two things that we have, Hello for Business and FIDO, these things are very strong. They're all fully phishing resistant. Phone sign-in is not. And so our examination of the environment is like, if we really, really want to achieve this vision of fully phishing resistant credentials across the organization, essentially, that guy's got to go. It was great, and I have no regrets about deploying phone sign-in to 700,000 people, but now we are going to eliminate that from our model over the course of the next year or two, depending on how things go. And we are going to up the bar once again. I will say also, for the people who are still in password land, that like 150,000 people or whatever that is, we are at least in the better column here. We turned off voice and SMS in our model a while ago, so those things are all completely disabled. It's basically all Authenticator. We technically support hardware tokens, but we've never bought any for anyone, so we don't have any. So I could take that off the screen. We're also not doing cert-based auth. Microsoft would show cert-based auth up here on the screen. This isn't something we found a use for, except for in the privileged world, which I'm not really talking about, although if you want to talk about it, we can. But cert-based auth is not part of what we are trying to do internally, so it's not part of my solution model. With that, a deep and cleansing breath, and what are we going to do next? So I have 3 big goals for my new project within Accenture to make things better. So to get to full phishing resistance, first thing I'm going to do is deploy passkeys to my entire organization and disable phone sign-in. I don't know exactly how, but I am going to do that. And we are actually going to enable passkeys in production on the 25th, which is funny because it's like Thanksgiving week and kind of an odd choice for a big major deployment, but we'll see how that goes. I'm going to be on vacation. And I have people and I trust them. It's all going to be fine. But that is one of our big goals that we're kicking off essentially right now. The next big goal is platform SSO for Mac OS. And so I don't know, I'll talk about it a little bit more here in a second, but in our model, Mac is a second-class citizen. So mostly the Mac users, to get to their stuff, are using phone sign-in, and it works, but phone sign-in is like not as good. They don't have a good integration with the OS like Windows Hello for Business. So what happened relatively recently is that Apple finally got serious about some of this stuff, shipped some capability, worked with Microsoft. Microsoft shipped some capability, and there's this thing now called Platform SSO for Entra. And it works, and we're deploying that. And essentially what that gives you is Touch ID and Passkey support within at the Mac OS level to do the exact same stuff that you can do in Windows with Hello for Business. It's awesome. We're going to turn it on. And then the last piece I'm going to do, my goal is to close this 20% gap and get this down to as small as possible. And I've decided that the number is 5%, but it might necessarily need to be smaller. But the 20% is too high for the number of people who still have passwords. And so I talk a little bit about that. Yeah? So I can't hear you, and so Sean, you're either going to have to come up or Sean's going to have to get a mic. Oh, yeah. So I'll talk about it in a second, but why passkeys? So the primary thing that is awesome with passkeys is that passkeys are fully phishing resistant and phone sign-in is not. So a way to think about this, just in case you're ever trying to decide, is it phishing resistant? If it's notification based, it's not phishing resistant. That's it. So if there are notifications, it can be phished. Passkey is not notification based. It works very similar to FIDO. We say phishing resistant. Somebody may come up with some interesting way to do something with this, but it cannot be phished through traditional channels. Phone sign-in, being notification based, is phishable, and therefore Passkey is better. The secret sauce that makes Passkey so awesome, though, is that Passkey will allow you to log into all of your mobile applications with a Passkey, which is incredibly important for us because I need still a way for people to be able to log into Teams and Outlook and other applications that we have in our environment with a passwordless authentication mechanism. So we expect it'll get used in a whole bunch of other places. It will probably displace FIDO in a bunch of things that we're using it for today. But in fact, let's just jump over to the Passkey slide. So I talked about this a little bit, but so what we are going to do, and by the way, we don't really know how this is going to go yet, right? This is all still super, super new. I would encourage everyone to attend Nitika's talk. I'm going to attend Nitika's talk, and I'm going to find out a little bit more about how we are actually likely to succeed at this. But I'll tell you essentially what I think is going to happen. So the goal is to turn this on, roll it out, and get all of my phone sign-in users enabled with passkeys on their devices, and possibly more than that, but at least all of them. And then eventually turn off phone sign-in within Entra so you can't use it anymore. That part is going to be harder. The things that I anticipate that will be difficult about achieving this, so for those who've been following the Passkey deployment closely, Passkey works on the current versions of iOS, yay. It requires, so to do device-bound passkeys, which is what we're going to be doing, you generally need to be on Android 14, and unfortunately, Android 14 is not as ubiquitous in the environment. When we do some analysis in our environment, we have about 150,000 of my Android devices are on 13 or lower. And we don't let it go much below that. I think it's all 13 and a little bit of 12, but that will be a problem. I don't exactly know how that is going to work itself out. The way I expect this will happen is that Google will release Android 15. We have an N-1 policy. After a grace period, we will actually switch to N-1, and we will actually force everyone to be on an Android 14 device. And then I will be in a place where I can do that. I don't know the timeline that all of that stuff is going to happen from an IT timing perspective. So sometime within the corpus of the next 6 to 9 months where we're driving this project, this will either be a problem or go away. But that is the big thing that I do not have a solve for. So nobody really knows exactly how you're going to do a mass adoption campaign for Passkey. One of the cool things is that new users registering passkeys will just be offered to get a passkey when they're doing their bootstrapping. So people who are going through device replace things, that'll be easy. We're expecting to get lots of actual viral adoption just through that. For the people who are on existing devices with phone sign-in, how do I push them to actually do this? I'm going to talk to Nitika and I'm going to say, Nitika, I need some stuff to do some things to prompt some people so that I don't just badger them with emails and tell them to do things that don't make any sense to them on their phones that they don't have time for. And I don't know exactly how this is going to go. The way these things usually go is that we do a pilot, we test some things, we try some stuff out, it works or it doesn't, and then we go rinse and repeat. And then once we get to something that's more comfortable, then we start driving it really hard across big parts of the organization and try to get to mass adoption numbers. My expectation is that this will be easier than it was to get everyone to do phone sign-in. And we did that, so somehow or another it will happen. A couple other things I will say about passkeys in case you're curious. Our curiosity is strictly with device-bound passkeys. Microsoft will someday support synced passkeys and we will ignore them. In our environment, we plan to use just device-bound passkeys for the enterprise environment. I don't necessarily think that that's the right decision for everyone in this audience either. I think actually sync passkeys are a pretty cool thing and something you ought to think seriously about doing. Don't necessarily be too strict. That whole bending gently thing is worth considering the risk reward in terms of how it all works. In my calculation, I think this is going to work out for us and we can do this effectively. But I also am not meaning to say that nobody should consider synced passkeys because I actually think it's a pretty good solution. So we're doing that. We have attestation turned on in case we get into the gory bits. We are rolling out with key restrictions in place, but we hate that. We do not wish to maintain a whitelist of specific security keys in our environment, and we're pissed off and wish to have that turned off as soon as Microsoft will support the ability to do that with attestation still enabled. And then we will turn that off before I can never convince my information security guys to ever allow us to turn that back off again. They think it's a good idea. We think it's terrible and of no real benefit. But I do think attestation is actually a really wonderful feature and everyone should do that. You really want your keys to be able to attest that they are real. So anyway, that's our passkey thing in a nutshell. Nitika's entire talk is about passkeys, and I would totally encourage you to go and spend some more time digging into that. Let me jump over to platform SSO. So this is, I think, kind of a nothing. Honestly, we're going to turn this on, and we expect that we will be able to do this without a huge, big problem. In case anyone is curious, for the nerds in the audience, we're deploying in the secure enclave model of this rather than the sync model, but we already had sync turned off, so this is also easy for us, and we're going to be happy with that. But our initial concern with this was that it was gonna, like, we use Jamf and we use Intune, and like, is this stuff all good? We were gonna break a bunch of stuff by turning this on, and the initial testing seems to indicate, no, it will not break a bunch of stuff. The thing that seems to be challenging about this mostly is that there doesn't appear to be a way that we can get the users to do this without actually having them take action. And like I said, this user base, while small, is also vocal and fussy. And it may be an interesting change management exercise for us to get them to all go through this. We think that they will be pretty psyched. I think they all really want Touch ID, and they're going to really enjoy this. And so I think the carrot's pretty awesome. And they're just like, busy and fussy. So we'll see, but mostly I think this is a nothing. I think this is going to be super easy, and we will get this done and have this be like the smallest, easiest part of this program. Closing the password gap. So one of the things when we were looking at this, like, why are we still at 80%? What's the problem? Within this, we actually have some tooling where people come back to us that we've actually tried to make passwordless by, doing the smart card required thing to them. And they've come back and said, you broke me. There's a thing, and I can't do this thing, and I got to have my password back. And so we collected the reasons behind those. But I only have 34,000 reasons, and I have 150,000 people who are not fully passwordless. And what I've come to learn is that our eligibility criteria are just probably too tough. We've generally required everyone to have 2 passwordless methods, which is like hello for business and or a phone sign in. And somehow or another, a bunch of people escaped through the net, and we're just like gotta tighten that up a little bit. And I think I'm gonna be able to eliminate a giant piece of this without actually having any what you would call hard problems. The most embarrassing hard problem I have left in this space is RDP, because RDP in the Microsoft model is, in theory, a solved problem. There is Hello for Business and FIDO-based login for RDP. We can't get ourselves upgraded to Server 2022 to do this. We've been trying, it's not done yet, it's taking us a while, and that is the big blocker. I have the workstation dependencies all lined up. We've had the Windows 11 stuff all done for a long time, but getting all of our servers on Server 2022 is hard. I don't even have that many servers anymore. I used to have like 40,000, I'm down to 8, but there's, this budget keeps getting kicked down the road, tech debt. Everyone knows this who works in IT here. And so we are considering the possibility of rolling out certs for this small number of people who need to do this, and will possibly do that. There are a couple of other weird little niche apps that are used by very small numbers of people that are like in the long tail of this of these reasons things. But generally speaking, my expectation is that if once we apply ourselves to this, we are going to be able to make a bunch of this stuff go away and get this down to a really tiny thing. I think I will tell you within this is that what I'm talking about applies to our enterprise workforce. It's different in the world of admin land. So admins, it's complicated, but a lot of admin stuff still has passwords. I haven't figured out a way to get my network admins to log into all of their stuff with TACACS without a password. I haven't figured out how to hack TACACS out of my environment. I don't know what to do. We put all kinds of other controls and gates around them, but some of them are likely going to have passwords. The way that we do this, primarily, we're very rigid about segmenting people into separate admin accounts. I have 12, and I don't even do anything. I have 12 accounts, and only one. I have like one permission to do anything. Most of them are just figurehead admin accounts. I do have a privileged access workstation as well too that I can log into and stare at, but I can't do anything. But we're very rigid about segmenting out all of our admin workload into separate accounts. So my productivity account, as I would refer to it, is fully passwordless. Some of my admin accounts are fully passwordless. But my the hybrid synced accounts, of which there are a good number of those actually all do still have passwords, and we need to support that. I will continue to try and drive that down as much as possible and make them use FIDO for all of their cloud stuff. We also, like our domain admins are all on-prem only smart card login, so that's a passwordless use case that we support a different way. But yeah, the IT admin thing is hard, and we have elected to solve that different ways by like segmenting those people off. That is also a relatively small percentage of the user population at Accenture as well too. It's probably more IT admins than you have, but still round off error in the population. So that is the balance of my talk. I am happy to take questions. I brought along some slides if anyone wants to see any of the stuff that we built. But otherwise, let me pause and see if anyone wants to ask me anything. Otherwise, thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Temporary access passwords.
Yeah.
I trying to get my head around that because it says phishing resistant, but the service desk is allowed to.
Oh.
The service desk is allowed to create a temporary access password. The problem I see is that it exists next to someone's password. So if there's given out a temporary access password for a user, the user won't notice. So the user won't notice that there is also a temporary access password created. So I call up the service desk. I convince them I'm Mr. Domain Admin or whatever. Have them create a temporary access password for me, and I can log in without the user even noticing. So how about that is phishing resistant? You can't phish the user, but you can phish the service desk. Or not phishing, but social engineer.
Okay, so first of all, I definitely share some of your concerns. Temporary access passes are, being passwords are in some way, shape, or form phishable. Let me talk a little bit about how we've dealt with this, because we've done a bunch of stuff. So first of all, we have a self-service portal. This is a screenshot of it. And the way this works is that anyone at Accenture can log into this self-service password portal if you have the right stuff. Like you definitely aren't going to get into this from your personal device from home. But if you have the right stuff, you can go into this and you can click the Get Started button, tap thing there, and it will issue you a temporary access pass for your account. And you can then use this to self-service set yourself up to do things. And so this is a thing that we built. This goes through a specific thing. You don't get to control anything about this tap. It is a 30-minute single-use tap. That's what we do internally, and with like certain character count and whatnot. So this is a thing that we do to help drive self-service through this model and allow people to do bootstrapping and whatnot. A couple of defense in depth things that we've done in this space as well too. Anytime anyone changes their MFA methods or their authentication methods in Entra, you will get an email and you'll get a Teams ping. And we had to build that. And so I would like to ask everyone in this room to ask Alex Weiner to ship a feature within the Entra platform that one could just turn that on, such that customers such as me would not need to build such things. I think that would be super awesome. But yeah, that was one of our observations is we want to make sure that if anyone is messing with your authentication methods, that we at least try to tell you, is that possibly phishable? Yeah, but we require managed compliant device to get into all the O365 stuff. So I'm pretty confident that that's an okay channel, and at least we tried. So we did have some defense in depth there. The same applies with the service desk. So our service desk admins don't actually have permission to create tap in Entra. We would never ever do that. They also have their own tool that has some stuff in it and whatnot, and they can create a tap for a user through this sort of narrow range of things. But then the user will also get notified as well too. Is it the best? No. I think Microsoft has some interesting ideas about things that you could potentially do with like additional ID proofing in front of this, like using things like verified ID. You still need a glue mechanism to get people set up. One of the things that is nice about these is that we issue them pretty ephemeral, 30 minutes, single use. It is more often the case that people will screw up using their tap and wish to need to go and get another one. So we think we're actually maybe a little bit on the strict side in terms of the usability on it. But is it a perfect solution? No. Do you have to do something? Yes, and I think it's a pretty reasonable conceit, but you certainly want to be really, really careful about how you're doing stuff. We also have some special CA policies around changing auth methods and whatnot with some auth strengths. Like there's a bunch of defense in depth things that we've attempted to do to try and make sure that for sensitive security operations, we're doing a bunch of additional stuff and whatnot. But do I think I'm perfect? Absolutely not. 100% no. But I think there is a lot of opportunity to layer defense in depth, and I do think you need a mechanism for it.
Next question. Anyone?
We have one right
I saw a lot of hands.
One right here.
Pardon me. How do you deal with onboarding? So, person gets a new device, and that first time on a device or an enrollment. I know you talked a little bit about the phone enrollment, but like, what about a device?
Okay, so this is not that great. So we still have hybrid workstations at Accenture. We are in the process of changing this. We are in the process of rolling out Entra-join workstations. It's going to take a while, like 20, 30 while, to replace our entire fleet. Maybe it goes faster, depending on budgets and priorities and whatnot. But right now, the money is on 2030 to complete this. So we still have hybrid workstations, and we're actually still rolling out new hybrid workstations to some people today. We're like relatively early days for Entra-join workstations. A thing that you should know, in case you didn't know, is that you can totally bootstrap an Entra-join workstation with a tap or a passkey, and that totally works, and it's great. And they don't need to have a password. You can totally not do that with a hybrid workstation. You can only log into a hybrid workstation the first time with either a password, a smart card, or a FIDO token. And I already told you I'm not giving out FIDO tokens and smart cards to my entire workforce. So what is it that I'm actually doing when people getting new workstations? Let me talk about new workstations first, and then I'll do like new employee onboarding, which is like a different story, which also involves getting a new workstation. But workstation replacement, here's what we do. We see the second button there? We have this thing, you can unscroll yourself. And what we tell people to do is, oh, you're getting a new workstation. You need to actually go get a password back. And the way you do it is you click this button, and we don't actually give you a password. We just turn you back on for SSPR in Entra, and then you do a self-service password reset on yourself. You have a password. And then you have a password, and then you can log into a workstation and get things set up and get yourself loaded back in. And then you go back in and you redo this. And there's like some other stuff that gets collected in this tool, and then we will also force you to go back and redo it later. Does this suck? Yes, this really sucks. We do not like having to do this. Do you have to do it very often? No, we don't give out workstations that often. So this is a thing that people aren't doing all the time, but we did provide a self-service functionality to do this. Will this get better once we move to Entra-join? Yes, because we'll be able to do this with tap or passkey that people already have. Really exciting, will be a lot better. And but for now, this is one of the things that we've just decided to live with, and we built a bunch of scaffolding around it to make it work. New employee onboarding. Woo. This one, so I have so many dreams of things that I want to do, and so many things that we haven't done yet, and this also varies wildly by geography. I mentioned at the beginning that we're in 49 different countries and 200 different offices, and the way new employee onboarding works tends to vary by geography. So this is a really hard problem. My aspirational goal for this is some sort of thing that we do with verified ID to bootstrap you into a credential that you can use to bootstrap up your enterprise account. We're not there yet. And so we're doing other things during new employee onboarding to get people up to speed. This will probably move over to people who are doing the new employee onboarding, like helping people get a tap code. We have some other stuff that we do with B2C pre-joiner onboarding that allows me to do some things. So I'm playing with a whole bunch of stuff in this space. I'm going to guess that everyone in this room struggles to figure out a really secure way to onboard people. It's not a super easy problem. And I think this will be an interesting evolving landscape. I have 20 seconds left for one more question, or am I done?
Probably it's a good time to do it, Joe. But the folks that, he's going to be right here next to you in line and every place else. And he loves to answer questions, as you can tell.
Yeah, thanks.
So thank you, Joe.
Happy to talk. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it.